So I was told that Gauranga Darshan Prabhu had already completed the first 12 verses. So we'll just quickly recap what has happened, and so that we can start from the 13th verse. Eleventh tak ho gayi. So Sutta Goswami, he continues narrating about this meeting that happened between Narada Muni and Vyasadeva. He says, Atatam sukam asina upasinam brihat shravaha devarshi praha viprarshim veena pani smayan iva. So, as soon as Narada Muni carrying the veena, when he arrived, he was seated comfortably by Vyasadeva, and then he started speaking to Vyasadeva with a smile, because he understood that he wanted to, because he was internally pleased with Vyasadeva, the Acharyas explained. Therefore, he started smiling. And then he says, Parasharya Mahabhaga Bhavata Kachidatmana Paritushyati Sharira Atma Manasa Evava. My dear son of Parashar, you are from a very exalted lineage. Parashar Muni is your father. Are you satisfied identifying with the body or mind to be the self? He says, what could be the cause of your dissatisfaction? Jigyasitam susampannam apite mahadadbhutam kritvan bharatam yastvam sarvartha paribrahmitam. Actually, lack of knowledge cannot be the cause of your dissatisfaction, because you have written your magnum opus Mahabharata, which talks about all these four purusharthas in such great detail, dharma, artha, kama and moksha. Therefore, lack of knowledge I don't see could be a reason for your dissatisfaction. And then he says, Jigyasitam adhitam cha brahma yattat sanatanam tatapi shochasi atmanam akritartha iva prabhu. He says, my dear Vyasadeva, that I don't think even lack of realization could be a reason for your lamentation or dissatisfaction, because you have poured in your realizations about the Supreme Brahman so lucidly in your Vedanta Sutra. Therefore, I don't think lack of realization also is a reason for your lamentation. So therefore, why you are lamenting as if you are unsuccessful? So, Vyasadeva, he says, Astyeva me sarvam idam tvayoktam tatapi natma paritushyate me tanmulam avyaktam agada bodham prachamahe tvatma bhavatma bhutam. He says, sarvam idam me tvaya uktam asti. Like we say, tatastu. Like that he says, asti eva. I think whatever you have spoken about me is true. This is the disciple speaking to the spiritual master. Whatever you have glorified me is true. Like that he is telling. Because it was actually true. And tatapi me atma na paritushyate. Yet my mind is not satisfied. Even though I understand that I don't lack knowledge and I don't lack realization also. But still I am not satisfied. Prachamahe tvam avyaktamulam. I am not able to see the root cause of my dissatisfaction. The root is avyaktam. It's invisible. I am not able to see. But you are agada bodham. Your knowledge is very deep. Therefore you can see the invisible. And you are born from Brahmaji himself. You are the son of Brahma. If I am born from Parashar Muni, if that is a great qualification, you are born from the self-born Brahma. So you are more qualified. Therefore you can see what I cannot see. You can see the root cause of my dissatisfaction. So you please speak. And then further he identifies further glories of Narada Muni, which makes him qualified to identify the cause of his dissatisfaction. He says, Savai Bhavan Veda Samasta Guhyam. You certainly know Savai Bhavan, which means you are certainly an avatar of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Veda Samasta Guhyam. You must certainly know the secrets of all the Vedic scriptures. Why? Because Purana Purushaha Upasitaha. You worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That makes you all the more qualified to understand these subject matters very clearly. Therefore, you should please identify what is the root cause of my suffering. Why am I feeling dissatisfied? And then he says, Tvam paryatan arka ivat trilokim antascharo vayur ivatma sakshi paravare brahmani dharmato vrataihi snatasya me nyunam alam vichakshva. Tvam paryatan arka ivas trilokim. Just like the sun, you wander throughout the three worlds. Which means you can see, just like the sun can see, even the most, hidden areas. It can throw light on the most hidden areas. Similarly, you are like the sun. Antascharo vayur ivatma sakshi. And just like the air can flow everywhere, throughout the body, inside the body and outside the body. Therefore, similarly, you are like the sun and the air, which can move everywhere and throw light on all objects. Therefore, you are Atma Sakshi, you are the witness of everyone's intelligence. Similarly, you are my Atma Sakshi also. What is wrong with my intelligence? He says, Snatasya me alam. I am sufficiently proficient in Avare Brahmani and Parabrahmani. Avare Brahmani is the Vedas and Parabrahmani is the Parabrahman, Supreme Brahman. I think my knowledge of the Vedas and my realization of Brahman, as you have mentioned, is sufficient. I don't think, there is any more proficiency needed in my understanding of the Vedas or the Brahman, as you rightly identified. Dharmato vrataihi, and I have attained this knowledge based on proper methods only. Not like Karna or someone, who approached the Parashuram and lied that he was actually a Kshatriya and learnt. He said Brahmana. So Dharmato vrataihi, by proper Dharma vratas, I have learned these things. So therefore, but Nyunam means, but still something is deficient and I am not able to see. Avyakta Moolam, the root cause is not visible. Vichakshva, can you please look into this matter and find out, what exactly is the root cause of my lamentation, my dissatisfaction. So Narada Muni, he replies, Bhavata anudita prayam yasho bhagavato amalam yenai vasauna tushyeta manye tad darshanam khilam. He says, he directly comes to the answer here. He says, Bhavata anudita prayam. Prayam means almost. You have almost not glorified amalam bhagavato yashaha, the spotless glories of Lord Krishna. You have almost not glorified. Which means, considering the percentage of the Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda sections, the direct glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very, very insignificant. Therefore, he says, for all practical purposes, if someone takes up any random book that you have written, the probability that he will find about pure devotional service and the glories of the Supreme Lord is very, very low. Therefore, you have almost not written about pure devotional service. You may say that you have written the Vedanta Sutra, which is fully about the impersonal Brahman or the Brahman feature of the Lord. But he says, what is the result? Yena eva asauna tushyeta. You yourself are not satisfied reading that scripture. Do you think anyone else who reads that scripture will become satisfied? Manye tad darshanam khilam. Therefore, I consider that this scripture is an insufficient scripture. Khilam. But then, Narada Muni may say, or Vyasadeva may say, but I have written the Mahabharata. How can you say that I have not sufficiently glorified the Supreme Lord? In Mahabharata and in other Puranas, Padma Purana and other Puranas, I have glorified the Supreme Lord. How can you say that I have not glorified? He says, Yata dharmadayas charta munivaryanu kirtita na tata vasudevasya mahima hi anuvarnita. To the extent that you have described dharma, artha, kama in your scriptures or the path of jnana, na tata vasudevasya mahima anuvarnitah. To that extent you have not glorified vasudevasya mahima. Therefore, it is very, very disproportionate what you have done. Considering the glory of devotional service, considering how superior this path of devotion is to the path of karma and jnana, what you have done is very disproportionate. Then he says, this devotional service and speaking about the glories of the Lord is so important that however poetic or well written a work may be, but if it is devoid of glorification of the Supreme Lord, there is no worth to it. Nayad vachas chitra padam harer yasho jagat pavitram pragranita karhichit tad vayasam tirtha mushanti manasa na yatra hamsa niramantu shikshayaha. Works whose attractive verses na karhichit pragranita, which do not glorify at all harer yashah, the glories of the Supreme Lord. And what is the nature of the glories of the Supreme Lord? Jagat Pavitram. It has the capacity to purify this whole world, not just the person who has composed that work. Tad Ushanti Manasa. The great devotees who have captured the Lord within their hearts, those people, they consider such scriptures as Vayasam Tirtham. Vayasam Tirtham means a place of pilgrimage for the crows. Yatra Ushikshayaha Hamsa na Niramanti, where the swans living in pleasant lakes, they do not take enjoyment at all. The same way, yes, Prabhuji.
Why this word Vayasam? It's like a very good word, Vayasam.
Vayasam.
Vayasam. Vayasam. Any reason why Vayasam from taking up the word?
I don't know. Yesterday we had payasam and I was just reading this chapter. So.
The donkey is also known as
Like that. So then he says, on the other hand, however improperly constructed the literature may be, if that is filled with glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then the thoroughly honest devotees, they accept it, sing it, glorify it, and they are very pleased with it. Tadvad visargo janataga viplavo yasmin pratishlokam abaddavatyapi namanyanantasya yashomkitaniyat shrinvanti gayanti grinanti sadava. Yasmin pratishlokam abaddavatyapi, in which even if every single shloka has been improperly composed, but anantasya namani, which has the names of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, yat yasho ankitani, and it also has the descriptions of his glories. Shrinvanti gayanti grinanti sadava. The devotees hear, sing, and again receive those descriptions again and again. So like that it is described about the nature of work which glorifies the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So now we will start with the next 12th verse from which we have to continue today. Naishkarmyamapyachyutabhavavarjitam. We'll chant together. Na shobhate jnanamalam niranjanam kuta punah shashvadabhadrameshware na charpitam karma yadapyakaranam. He says, not only are the words important, if there is no bhakti, then the whole work is useless. He says, Naishkarmyam jnanam api. Even the stage of jnana, which may extricate one from the bondage of karma, na shobhate. That knowledge, even though it may have the capacity to extricate one from the cycle of birth and death, na shobhate. It is not glorious if achyuta bhava varjitam. If it is devoid of bhakti to the Supreme Lord, there is no glory in that. Alam niranjanam. Even though that knowledge may destroy one's ignorance, what is the use of the ignorance being destroyed? There is no use. Because eventually it is not going to lead one to liberation. Because it is achyuta bhava varjitam. Kuta punah shashvadabhadram. What then, if this is the case with Naishkarmya Jnana, then what to speak of Sakama Karma, which talks about Kamya Karma, enjoying one's own fruit. That is Shashvad Abhadram. While performing, it's very difficult because any small mistake you do, you may get no result or opposite result or some undesired result. You have to be very careful. And after you get whatever you desire also, it will not give any long-lasting satisfaction. So therefore, Shashvad Abhadram, such an activity, such a act of Sakama Karma, it's a cause of suffering both during practice and at the stage of perfection. And Akaranam Karma, and what then to speak of Nishkama Karma, Yadapi Ishvarena cha Arpitam, that which is not offered to the Supreme Lord. Even Nishkama Karma will not purify the heart if that karma is not offered to the Supreme Lord. Because the goal of Nishkama Karma is to purify the heart so that one can come to the stage of Jnana. But that Nishkama Karma will not purify the heart if the fruits of that activity are not offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even though the performance of that act may be with detachment from the fruits. So just merely detaching oneself from the fruits is not sufficient, but those fruits must be offered to the Supreme Lord. If that is not offered, even that practice of Nishkama Karma Yoga is not capable of purifying one's heart. Okay, like that, here Narada Muni is explaining the mood of Narada Muni while he is explaining to Vyasadeva here is, some of the statements that he is making here is indicative of his mode of desperation, and some of the statements are philosophically perfect statements, and some statements are they are indicative of his mood of desperation. So here he is indicating that what did you do? Even don't you understand this, that the active ingredient, like for example, I have heard this, I don't know how far it is true, in Surf Excel and all these kinds of powders, there is this white portion, and then there are these blue, red, green, globules. I have heard somewhere that actually the cleaning action is carried out by those globules, colored globules, and the white section just produces the foam, something like that. So the active ingredient which actually produces the cleansing action are those globules. So similarly, all these other practices, the active ingredient in those practices, whether it is Nishkama Karma Yoga to attain the stage of Jnana, or the practice of Jnana Yoga to attain liberation, or Ashtanga Yoga to attain Paramatma realization or liberation, or practice of Sakama Karma Yoga to attain one's goals of Swarga or anything, the active ingredient in all these practices is Bhakti. Which means when that Bhakti is absent, that merely practicing that act cannot give the result. Okay, so that's what he is indicating here. Whether it is Nishkama Karma Yoga or Sakama Karma Yoga or even the path of Jnana, if it is devoid of the active element of Bhakti, na shobhate, it is not glorious at all, which means it will not give the desired result. So, here, so he says, what then to speak of unrealized scriptural knowledge? If even realized scriptural knowledge is incapable of producing its result, what to speak of unrealized scriptural knowledge? One should, this is Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti commenting on this, he says, one should not say that you can achieve liberation just by destroying ignorance. He is commenting on Alam Niranjanam. What is the use of destruction of such an ignorance? One desires to destroy ignorance so that one can achieve liberation. But if merely when the ignorance is destroyed, but when one does not achieve that liberation, then one feels all the more miserable. So, he says, but by the inconceivable energy of the Lord, the destroyed ignorance again arises in such a person. Because Anadrita Yushmadangraya, because he does not have attachment to the lotus feet of the Lord. So, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti quoting from one of the scriptures, Parishishta Vachanam from Vasana Bhashya, he says, Jivan Mukta api punar bandhanam yanti karmabir yati achintya mahashaktau bhagavati aparadinaha. Even the liberated persons again get bound by karma if they commit offense against the Lord, the possessor of great inconceivable powers. So even though, so one should understand that his attainment of liberation was because of his favorable attitude towards the Supreme Lord. But later, when he developed an unfavorable attitude, then he fell down. So, Srila Rupa Goswami, when he defines pure devotional service, he says, Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karma dhanavritam anukulyena krishnanushilanam bhaktiruttamam. So in this definition of pure devotional service, there are two primary characteristics and two secondary characteristics. The two primary characteristics of pure devotional service are anukulyena and krishnanushilanam. It must be done with a favorable attitude towards the Supreme Lord. And that favorable attitude must translate into service. Anushilanam, Krishna Anushilanam. So when these two aspects are there, then what he is practicing can be termed as bhakti. Further, when that practice of bhakti is devoid of any other desires other than to please the Lord, anya bilashita shunyam, and if such a practice does not take support of other processes like karma, jnana, yoga, etc., that is jnana, karma, dhyanavritam, then such a bhakti is uttama bhakti. But the bare minimum is it must be anukulyena and krishnanushilanam. Okay. So, definitely this person would have achieved liberation by having a favorable attitude, by favorably serving Krishna, but eventually when that favorable attitude was lost, immediately he lost what he attained also. That is indicated here. Jivan mukta prapadyante kvachit samsara vasanam yogino na vilipyante karmabir bhagavat paraha. Liberated souls sometimes are subject subjected to birth and death, but the yogis who surrender to the Lord are not touched by karma. Is indicating the potency of devotional service. Thus, the effect of jnana is destruction of karma. Jnanagni sarva karmani bhasmasat kurte Arjuna. Krishna says in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita that how the fire of knowledge has the capacity to burn one's karma. But Shukadeva Goswami or here Srila Vishwanath Thakur is contesting that statement. He says it's a provisional statement. He says, but that is not so wonderful because it is also said concerning Rathayatra in Vishnu Bhakti Chandrodaya of another Puran that Nanu vrajanti yo mohat vrajantam jagadishwaram jnanagni dagda karma api sabhaved brahma rakshasa. He says. Now the same words are used. Jnanagni dagda karma api. Even though he has burnt all his karma by the fire of knowledge, sabhaved brahma rakshasa. He becomes a brahma rakshas. Why? Na anuvrajanti vrajantam jagadishwaram, because he does not follow the chariot of the Supreme Lord when it is moving. Which means that is an act of devotional service. If that devotion is absent, even after achieving the perfection of one's practice, then one falls down from that perfection. If it is not there in first case, one cannot achieve perfection. After achieving perfection, if one does not follow the principles of devotional service, then one loses that perfection also. That is indicated here. Like that. Okay. So then, here in this verse, Srila Prabhupada, commenting on his purport, he says, so not only are mundane literatures condemned, I am reading my notes, not exactly the exact words, but whatever notes I have taken from Prabhupada's purport I am reading. This includes even jnana that leads to Brahman. What then to speak of kamya karma, which is painful both in the beginning and in the end? Shashwat abhadram. But when this karma is made subservient to devotional service, then it is fruitful. Otherwise, it is just trouble, like that Prabhupada writes in the purport. When this karma is made subservient to devotional service, then it is fruitful. Otherwise, it is just troublesome. Like that. So then, Srila Narada Muni, he continues, Ato mahabhava bhavana mogadrik shuchishrava satyarato dradavrata urukramasya kila bandha muktaye samadhina nusmaratad vicheshtitam. He says, Ato, therefore, Mahabhaga, O greatly fortunate Vyasadeva, please don't mind that I am chastising you, but I want to tell you that you have the capacity to contribute for the ultimate benefit of the people. Though you have not done it till now, but you certainly do have the capacity to do it. So he's indicating, Bhavan Amogadrik. You have your vision or your understanding is infallible. Shuchi Shravaha, and your character is spotless. Okay. So therefore, if one is not endowed with the highest knowledge, or if one is not qualified because of his character to attain highest knowledge, then one may say that it's okay, whatever you have understood, you contribute, or you are not qualified to contribute. But here he is indicating that you are amogadrik, your drishti is perfect, and shuchishravaha, your character is also spotless, and satya rato, you are dedicated to truth. Whatever is the highest truth, you have a desire to present it. Okay. and Dhridavrata, and whatever it takes to establish the truth, you are willing to, with great determination, pursue it. So these four characteristic traits make you perfectly qualified to actually give what you have not given. Amoghadrik, your useful knowledge, spotless character, dedication to truth, and determined vows. Therefore, Samadhina Anusmara, remember with attention, Urukramasya Tadvicheshtitam, the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. And what is the nature of remembering such pastimes? Akhila Bandha Muktaye. It is capable of bringing about liberation from all bondage. Therefore, remember means he is indicating remember, write and present so that we can also read and remember. Like that. So, Srila Vaishnava Thakur commenting on this, he says, the word, when would you say remember? When you ask someone, do you remember? Or do you remember me? Which means, if there has been a previous meeting or only when there has been some previous meeting. So here he is telling the word remember is used because the pastimes appear spontaneously in the pure mind filled with devotion, since they are all self-revealing, infinite, most confidential, and impossible to speak or receive by any other means. Therefore, he is telling remember, because you have experienced it. So now you remember. What is the proof? He is indicating Amoghadrik. You have pure eyes. So some pastimes you have seen with your eyes. Shuchi Shravaha also means you have pure ears. Some pastimes you have heard with your pure ears. Okay. So therefore, and not only have you heard and seen, but Satyarataha also means with very attached mind. So without attachment, anything that one hears, it may not get registered and it may not create favorable transformation. He says that Satyarataha and Dhridavrata, and you have determined intelligence also. Therefore, whatever you have heard and seen and assimilated through your attached mind and determined intelligence, you please present it. After remembering them, you please tell them to us. Like that, Narada Muni is inspiring Vyasadeva. That is the meaning of Amoghadrik Shuchishravaha Satyarato Dhridavrataha. So Satyarato also means one who has an attached mind, and also it means one who is attached to the one who is dedicated to truth. So therefore, Narada Muni, even though he has chastised Vyasadeva, but he is telling, see, I am chastising you because you are capable of giving the highest thing and you have not done it. So now I am telling you, now you do it. Like that. Asakti, yeah. So, Srila Prabhupada here in this purport, he writes, people are eager to read literatures, but cheap literatures exploit this tendency and give only sense gratification. But such literatures are not capable of giving one liberation. Therefore, Narada Muni, being compassionate, advises Vyasadeva to write a literature that is both attractive and has the capacity to liberate. Because if it is not attractive, then people will not take up to it. And if it is just attractive, then people will not get benefited by it. So therefore he says that write a literature, it should be simultaneously attractive, at the same time it should have the capacity to liberate people. But what is the qualification of Vyasadeva or his representative? Prabhupada writes, what is the qualification? Shuchishravaha, Satyarato, Dhridavrataha, and Amogadrik. He must have useful knowledge or very clear vision. And he should be determined to deliver the fallen souls. That determination should be there. Dadavrataha. So then Prabhupada writes, everyone wants novel information. Therefore, Vyasadeva and his representatives can continuously supply news about different Brahmandas. Like during Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur's time, when they were publishing Nadia Prakash, that was like what was the frequency of that magazine? Was it a daily magazine? It was daily magazine. Someone asked, how can you write, if it is regular news, okay, something new is happening every day. How can you have a magazine about the spiritual subject matter and that too every day you publish it? Won't you very soon run out of matter to write? And Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur, he said something like, what to speak of every day? There is so much happening in the spiritual world that practically every minute you can publish a magazine about it, like that.
I can print it, but there are not readers for it.
There are not readers for it, like that. So everyone wants novel information. Therefore, Vyasadeva and his representatives can continuously supply news about different Brahmandas. The many mundane literatures are incapable of satisfying people. Why? Because Prabhupada writes, because of spiritual vacuum, because they have no spiritual subject matter, so therefore it is not capable of satisfying the soul. Therefore spiritual literatures can remove that problem and offer liberation from material pangs. And then Prabhupada writes, but who can describe the Srimad Bhagavatam? Qualification. He says, only liberated souls like Vyasadeva who are engaged in devotional service, they can describe the Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada writes. Only to such people does the transcendental nature of Srimad Bhagavatam automatically manifest. What is Prabhupada indicating here? What word of this shloka is Prabhupada commenting on? Automatically appear. Actually he's talking about Samadhina Anusmara. Anusmara means remember, and if you remember Srila Vishwanath Thakur commenting on this verse, remember, Anusmara, he says, the pastimes appear spontaneously in the pure mind filled with devotion. Commenting on the same point, Prabhupada mentions here, only to such people like Srila Vyasadeva does the transcendental nature of Srimad Bhagavatam automatically manifest. And what are the symptoms of such a liberated person? Prabhupada writes in the last section of this purport, he says, he is a Paravaragya. Paravaragya means he is the knower of the both the spiritual and the material subject matter. He has the power of vision, Amogadrik, power of wisdom, and he is perfect in oral reception, Shuchishhravaha, and he is perfect in thinking, perfect in feeling, and they have perfect senses which only serve the Supreme Lord. As Brahmaji in the second canto he says, Na bharati menga mrishopa lakshate navaikvachinne manaso mrishagati name rishikani patantya satpate yanme hrid autkantyavata drito harihi. He says, actually, my dear Narada Muni, he is speaking to Narada Muni. He says, my senses can never go wrong. It can never go in the wrong path. And my words can never be proven false. Na bharati menga mrisha upalakshate. You can never spot a mistake in my words, he says. Navai kvachinne manasa mrisho gati. He says, and my mind you will never see it going in the wrong direction. Brahmaji is telling. And then he says, Name rishikani patante satpate. My senses can never go in the wrong path. He says, why? Yanme hrit outkantyavata druto harihi. Because with great zeal and enthusiasm, I embrace the lotus feet of the Lord within my heart. Therefore, that not because I am Brahma, but because I am a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, my words can never go wrong, my mind can never go in the wrong path, and my senses can never go in the wrong direction. Like that. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam is the perfect description of the all-perfect Lord by the all-perfect author Srila Vyasadeva. Like that Prabhupada writes in the purport. Okay. So, he is telling, therefore, my dear Vyasadeva, you have the qualification to present the topmost subject matter. Therefore, you should do it. You have all the qualifications. But if you fail to do it and continue writing literatures like what you have written till now, then what will be the effect? He says in the next verse. Tatonyata kinchana yadvivakshataha kritagdrishastatkrita rupanamabi na karhichitvapi chadustitamate labetavata naurivaspadam. So he says, Matihi, the intelligence, yad anyata kinchana vivakshataha, the intelligence of those people who desire to speak on other subject matters other than the subject matters of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Kritagdrishaha, they develop another vision, or who develop another vision. Dustita, stiti means stability. Dustita means it becomes unstable, it becomes disturbed. The mind of the intelligence of those people who speak on other subject matters, it becomes disturbed. Tat krita rupa namabihi, by the words describing those subject matters. The same words make their minds disturbed. Na karhichit kwapi labeta aspadam. Aspadam means its proper goal or objective. So, such a person's intelligence cannot attain its objective. Yamimam pushpitam vacham pravadantya vipaschitaha vedavadarata partha na anyadasti iti vadinah. Such people are so caught up in the temporary benefits of Swarga that they are not willing to consider something higher. They say, na anyadasti. There can be nothing higher than this. Don't speak. There can be nothing higher than Swarga. Say liberation, what do you do? You have nothing there. So, they are not willing to hear about any higher subject matter because it just catches them. Vata ahata naur iva. They are just like a boat which is attacked by the wind. When the boat is attacked by the wind, then it cannot go to its destination. Okay. So similarly, the intelligence of such people who desire to speak on other subject matter is compared to a boat, and the very same subject matters are compared to the wind, which does not allow the boat to reach its destination. Similarly, the intelligence of such a person cannot attain its proper goal because of being carried away by these words, like that he is indicating. So he is telling, what if you continue to write such literatures, what is going to happen? He is indicating. So, as Krishna says, Bhoga Ishwarya Prasaktanam Taya Apahrita Chetasam Vyavasayatmika Buddhir Samadau Na Vidiyate. For those people who are attached to enjoyment and power, Bhoga Aishwarya, and Taya Apahrita Chetasam, and whose consciousness has been deluded by such talk. Vyavasayatmika buddhir samadau na vidiyate. For such people, resolute intelligence does not take place. So one may question, Srila Vishnu Jagadapur, commenting on this verse of Bhagavad Gita, he says, that actually one may say, why can't someone have resolute intelligence to attain Swarga? Why can't someone have resolute intelligence to achieve the impersonal Brahman? Why can there be resolute intelligence only to obtain the objective of bhakti? That makes no sense. Resolute intelligence means one can have resolute intelligence to attain Swarga also. Kamatmanaha Swarga Para. Swarga Para means their life is dedicated to attaining Swarga. One verse before only Krishna says. So, Krishna Jagadagu gives an interesting analysis. He says that when you take other processes, there is a sadhana and there is a sadhya. There is a process of attaining the goal and there is the goal itself. He says, whenever someone applies himself to attaining a particular goal, his intelligence is split. Sometimes, let's say someone wants to become a doctor. He wants to join the medical college. So, a part of his intelligence is meditating on how, when I become a doctor, I will treat the patients, like that. So, because he has to meditate so that he gets the impetus to do all the hard work that is necessary to get into a medical college. Because if he is not meditating on the sadhya, the inspiration to perform sadhana will not be there. Therefore, while hearing about the Abhideya, one has to constantly hear about the Prayojan also. If Prayojan, because Prayojan gives the impetus to perform the sadhana. If that impetus is not there, then how much ever we hear about sadhana, we may not get inspired. Therefore, the whole Shikshashtakam starts with the Prayojan only. Chetodarpanam arjanam bhava mahadava vapana. So therefore, he says that a part of the intelligence is meditating on the sadhya, the goal. And then he says, a part of the intelligence has to meditate on the sadhana, which are always different for all the processes except bhakti. He says, one performs Nishkama Karma Yoga, the sadhana is detached performance of one's prescribed duty, and the sadhya is purification of heart. And when one reaches the stage of sadhya, he gives up what he has already been doing. So there is sadhana, sadhya, bheda, and the intelligence is split. Therefore, vyavasayatmika buddhi is not possible. And then he says, if it is jnana yoga, the sadhana is engaging the senses in shastric studies and other such things, and the sadhya is liberation. So he has to meditate on the bliss of liberation also to get the impetus to perform all that sense control and all that. And then he has to, a part of his intelligence must be applied to that sadhana also of sense control and shastric studies. But then there is sadhya, sadhana, bheda. There is a difference. And on top of that, the active ingredient in all these processes is bhakti. So therefore, a part of his intelligence has to meditate on how he can perform the bhakti element also. So it's not 2, but it's 3 minimum. But he says, only in bhakti there is no sadhya, sadhana, bheda. Because one performs, what is the sadhana? Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam. By performing that, what does one achieve? Purified Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Padasevanam, etc. And what is the active ingredient? Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam. So, sadhya, sadhana and active ingredient, all 3 are same only in bhakti. Therefore, he says that vyavasayatmika buddhi is possible only in practice of bhakti and no other process, like that he comments. So here he says that anything else you indicate, it will, that one cannot achieve that one pointed attention, like that. Yes, bro.
Why don't they are not able to even
Because probably we are not meditating only on practice of bhakti. See, at sadhana avastha we are telling, even at sadhana avastha, at the stage of nishtha it's possible, because we have not probably reached that stage of nishtha. It's not possible to have that, but at least it's theoretically possible at the higher stages of sadhana bhakti also. But it is impossible in any other practices, even at the higher stages of sadhana or sadhya. Like that is indicating.
How to understand this point that only in bhakti we can, because in other courses also they have to be focused. Sometimes we use focus, we use the word for even people who are materialistic people. So, is Vyavasayika would be very concentrated focus or like generic focus? Or is also very focused even materialistic focus,
Yeah, but here he is talking about there are too many things to focus for other practitioners, but in bhakti, if one attains, there is only one thing to focus on, therefore it doesn't split like that. That's because for whoever is qualified whoever has gained the qualification for a particular practice, they naturally take up to that practice. And here we are talking about people after attaining the qualification, what is the kind of obstacles they face. But to attain the qualification of bhakti itself, it's little difficult, because Rupa Goswami writes that it takes many lifetimes of accumulation of Agyata Sukriti before that Agyata Sukriti transforms into faith, Shraddha. So, accumulating that faith and getting the qualification for practice of bhakti, it's difficult actually. But once one attains that qualification, here we are comparing one person who is qualified for practice of jnana and another person who is qualified for practice of bhakti. So their adhikars are in their own processes. We are comparing these two people. But to gain that adhikar itself is, in one sense, it's not there in our hands. Whereas for any other practices, one can gain the adhikar by their own endeavor. But for practice of devotional service, to gain that adhikar depends on some other person, some other Vaishnava who has to bestow that adhikar on us. So therefore, and not just once, like that many lifetimes we have to constantly keep meeting Vaishnavas who can bestow mercy upon us, so that when we accumulate that, we can progress further. Generally, the general proposition, it can be one lifetime also, but generally it is many lifetimes in general. Yeah, Rupa Goswami also mentions. Yeah. So, here Srila Prabhupada commenting on this verse, he says, Vyasadeva in his various compilations mentioned about karma, jnana, yoga, etc. Therefore, it is difficult for people to fix their minds in devotional service. That's what he's indicating. We have written too much about these other things. Therefore, Narada Muni is telling Vyasadeva to write everything in relation to the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord is like he is like the stomach. Quotes this verse, Yatataror mola nishechanena tripyanti tat skanda bhujopashaka. Therefore, Vyasadeva shouldn't have compiled anything other than Srimad Bhagavatam, as it would create havoc for self-realization. He says, Vatahata naur iva, just like a boat which has been tossed back and forth by the wind, like that. It would create pantheism, and thus many religious sects would be created by such a. In one scripture he is talking about Indra, then Chandra, then Varuna, and people would think that these are all different powerful gods. To see the connection and to the supreme absolute truth is difficult, because not everyone is qualified. Therefore, Prabhupada is writing that it would create pantheism. Or pantheism is different. Pantheism is like it's like Virat Roop worship. That is, Prabhupada calls it as pantheism. Polytheism is different. Polytheism is worshipping different gods. Pantheism is worship of the Virat Roop. Prabhupada calls it as pantheism. This is detrimental to the progress of principles of Srimad Bhagavatam. Only Srimad Bhagavatam gives proper directions for progress in devotional service. Like that Prabhupada writes here. So then he continues. But Vyasadeva may say, your accusation is that I shouldn't have written about this karma kanda, jnana kanda, etc. But I want to defend myself here. Why did I write this Mahabharata and all these things which do not directly speak about the Supreme Lord? He says, I wrote so that indirectly I could connect them to the Supreme Lord. Vidura himself says in the third canto, why Vyasadeva wrote Mahabharata. He says, Munir Vivakshur Bhagavad Gunanam Sakapite Bharatam Aha Krishna Yasmin Rinam Gramya Sukhanuvader Matir Grihitanu Hare Katayam. He says that, my dear Maitreya, your friend Vyasadeva, Bhagavad Gunanam Vivakshuhu. What was his desire in compiling Mahabharata? He says that with a desire to describe the qualities of the Supreme Lord, he wrote Mahabharata. But how did he structure this Mahabharata? Gramya Sukha Anuvadaihi. He filled it with topics about material happiness. Why? Because that's what people are naturally attracted to. Swabhava Raktasya. Their Swabhava is naturally attracted to these material subject matters. But by doing that, what he wanted to do? Grihita Nrinam Matihi Bhagavad Gunanam. Through that, he wanted to attract them to the central topic of Bhagavad Gita, the teachings of Krishna. Okay. So, the purpose of Vyasadeva writing such scriptures is to attract the minds of the people to the subject matter of qualities, name form qualities of Krishna. So his desire was a very noble desire, and it was a very powerful way of doing it. But Narada Muni is attacking that very same attitude. He says, this will not work in Kali Yuga. He says, Jugupsitam dharma krite nushasatah Swabhavaraktasya mahan vyatikrama Yadvakyato dharma iti tarastito Namanyate tasya nivaranam jana. He says, what have you done by this? Mahan vyatikrama. You have created a great disturbance. Jugupsitam anushasatah. By teaching such a condemned subject matter, you have created great disturbance. Why? Because people are swabhava raktasya. Raktasya means they are attached to material enjoyment. People by nature are attached to material enjoyment. And dharma krite, in order to make them accept dharma, you have compiled this Mahabharata for the purpose of dharma. But still, the people to whom you are giving this Mahabharata, they are swabhava raktasya. By nature they are attracted to material enjoyment. So what they have done, did you notice? He says, Yad vakyato dharma iti stitaha namanyate tasya nivaranam. Because they are naturally inclined to enjoy, they will take all your statements about meat eating, drinking, etc. They will say that Vyasadeva has endorsed it. But you have endorsed it for what purpose? So that they can regulate their eating, drinking, etc. and eventually give it up. But they will not take the second part. Na manyate tasya nivaranam. They will keep on telling Vyasadeva endorsed, Vyasadeva endorsed, Vyasadeva endorsed, and they will keep on eating. They will not concern themselves about the regulations. They will just use you as the licensing authority. Because the nature of people of Kali Yuga is Swabhava Raktasya. Therefore, this is not a very powerful methodology that you have used. It will not work. I want to suggest to you an alternative methodology. That's what he is trying to say here. So here Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, humans, because of long association of material energy, are naturally inclined to enjoy. Swabhava Raktasya. Therefore, there are different kinds of species which are like different kinds of imprisonment, which is according to their different Swabhavas. The Swabhava and Karma decide the gross and subtle body of people. But human life offers one the way to get out of this material entanglement. Therefore, no one should be encouraged in making a plan for sense gratification. Then it leads to a misguided civilization. That is, people will never agree to renounce the material world. Na manyate tasya nivaranam. Therefore, it's very difficult. Therefore, regulated sense gratification, he says, is not a very good choice in this Kali Yuga. Also, people will engage in animal sacrifice. Therefore, Buddha had to come to stop such. That is the proof of Vyasadev's statement. Swabhavarattasya. Yad vakyato dharma iti itarahastito namanyate tasya nivaranam jana. Like that. People will accept those sections which allow sense gratification and reject those which recommend renunciation. Even in Mahabharata, people neglect the Bhagavad Gita and accept other topics. Therefore, this compromising spirit is condemned by Narada Muni here. A patient with a particular type of disease is always attracted to eat those eatables that are bad for him. This is true actually even according to Ayurveda. Prabhuji is here, he can comment on that. Once, I asked one doctor that he mentioned that according to whatever is one's prakriti, whatever is bad for him, he will naturally get attracted to eating that kind of food only. That is the law of nature. That's how nature has created. That is the meaning of yehi samsparshaja bhoga dukkha yone evate. No, that how even whatever is bhoga, whatever is an object of sense enjoyment for a particular person, that dukkha yoni is there in that only for him. Like that. It's like that.
What is the conclusion? What is the conclusion?
Not like that.
But there is also saying that
eat prasad, not eat bhoga.
Relish prasad. This relish prasad means relish food, right? There should be something of liking.
Prabhuji can only comment on this.
So basically, as per your Prakriti say, if you are you will have a natural liking towards something which is spicy, something which is, but that will not have a very good effect on your Prakriti. That it will increase and that will cause much more trouble to you. That's the whole point. I am a cup Prakriti. I like more sweets, but then eating more sweets will increase my cup. That will have more problem to my body. That's the whole point that he's trying to say. Let's say for nowadays example, people may not like those subjects which are good for your health. They are good for your tongue. So they are ultimately something which they like is actually not good in its true sense for their body. Cauliflower or whatever example. Children may like pizza, pasta, cheese, bread, butter. They may like it, the tongue may like it, but ultimately it's an invitation to a disease for the body. It's the whole point.
Is this observation or is there also a verse like quoting this?
No, I have to look for the
No, he quoted a verse to show that naturally people see, maybe he might be able to your point is right that people should naturally relish food. Maybe by understanding it, people may develop. It is triggered. It is meant to inspire people to develop proper taste. Even when scriptures talk about, when Krishna says that, what is that? Nigraha kim karishyati. What is that verse? Sadrisham cheshtate swasya prakritir jnanavanapi prakritim yanti bhutani nigraha kim karishyati. He says, naturally people will be attracted to act according to their swabhava only. What is the use of repression? But that way he is not recommending that everyone act according to his swabhava also. He says that indriyasya indriyasyarte ragadvesho vyavastito tayor navasham agacche tauhyasya paripantino. In the indriya artha, in the sense objects, is the seed of in the form of raga and dvesha. The sense objects have the potency to trap you in this material world, but you should not act. Instead, develop shastra chakshu, he says. Try to develop taste according to what the shastras recommend, which means reform your taste. Many times, we don't like something, but when we constantly hear what is good for us, our taste get transformed, because mind is what actually decides what is tasty and what is not tasty. When the mind constantly gets the higher intelligence, then the mind changes.
Basically, when you are saying relish food, so scripture explains that there are 6 rasas, shadras. So all the 6 rasas should be relished. If I just keep focusing on one rasa which I particularly like it, then that relish will turn into it will have a poisonous effect. So if you just focus on one thing, but you have to balance it with all the systems.
Okay, let's continue. So then, some people
unable to relish all
Pittopatapta rasanasya narochikano. Maybe, it's an indication of little jaundice tongue or something.
So keep having sweets.
Keep eating, you'll develop.
The box of sweet sugar is also
morning program में एक sweet दिया तो हम लोग लेने
Actually, that's what that verse is talking about. So here he is continuing Narada Muni. He says, Vichakshanosya veditum vibho ananta parasya navrittita sukham pravartamanasya gunair atmanas tato bhavan darshaya cheshtitam vibho. So here Narada Muni is chastising Vyasadeva. See what you have done. You gave them what they like so that you could attract them towards what is beneficial, but they took what they liked and rejected what is beneficial. Okay? Therefore, write Bhagavatam. That's your opinion. But Vyasadeva may say, so for that reason, if I give what is beneficial, because they don't like it, they will reject. So how does that solve the problem? So he says that, here Narada Muni says, not everyone is itarojana. Itarojana means people who are common men, who are swabhava raktasya, who are by nature attached to material sense enjoyment. There are some vichakshanas, he says. Vichakshano asya arhati veditum vibho. The wise person, what is his nature? Nivrittita. He is not attached to material enjoyment. Such people, asya vibhoho sukham veditum arhati. They are qualified to understand the happiness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And who is the Supreme Lord? Ananta Parasya, who is beyond measure. So such people will take up to bhakti. So for them you have to write Srimad Bhagavatam. Not everyone lacks discrimination. They will reject what is beneficial and they will accept what gives temporary benefit. Not everyone lacks discrimination. There are vichakshanas who are very discriminative. They will accept the path of bhakti. For them you should write. And then, because these people are elevated people, vichakshanas, therefore when they take up to bhakti, seeing them, yadyad acharati shreshta, tattad eva itarojana. The itarojanas will also take. So therefore, for vichakshanas you give bhakti, they will take, they will follow, and following them the itarojana will also follow. Otherwise, for everyone, if you are giving them karma kanda because they have some attachment, you are not giving a very good solution for everyone to progress. Okay. So therefore he says, pravartamanasya gunair anatmanas tato bhavan darshaya cheshtitam vibhoho. Therefore describe the pastimes of the Lord for those materials who are pushed by the gunas of matter. Therefore, seeing the vichakshanas, the itarojana will also accept bhakti. Therefore, you give this Bhagavatam, it will have the desired effect, believe me, like that Narada Muni is indicating to Vyasadeva here.
I mean, the translation is like, it doesn't come out like that, the translation. You read Srimad translation, how Prabhupada is translated, it doesn't show that vichakshana and the itaro will be attracted to vichakshana. You read that the translation feels like...
this is Vishnu Chakravarti's translation.
Yeah.
And some translations are slightly different, the way Prabhupada and Vishnu Chakravarti gives. So then here this is also directly not evident from this translation, but Srila Vishnu Chakravarti in his commentary he mentions about.
So even if you get the translation, you will not able to understand unless you look at it and then you get the inside of it.
The connection he gives. Yeah. So Srila Prabhupada here commenting on this verse, he says, spiritual science cannot be comprehended by materially attached people. Okay, that very same point Prabhupada starts the purport by indicating that. Spiritual science cannot be comprehended by materially attached people. In Prabhupada quotes, Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschidjitati siddhaye. Therefore, Narada Muni tells Vyasadeva, describe the science of God directly through his pastimes, indicating that maybe the science of God that you have described through the Vedanta Sutras, only vichakshanas, they are capable of understanding it. But what do you have for pravartamanasya, for those who are on the path of pravarti marg? For them, they have a desire to enjoy. So, tato bhavan darshaya cheshtitam vibhoho. For such people, you give them the direct pastimes of the Lord because it is simultaneously enjoyable at the same time beneficial. Whereas the philosophy of Vedanta Sutra, it may be beneficial, but it is not enjoyable for those in the Pravritti Marga. They don't have the qualification for that, like that. Therefore, Narada Muni tells Vyasadeva, describe the science of God directly through his pastimes. Vyasadeva is not materially attached, and so is Shukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this is a perfect combination for Srimad Bhagavatam. Like that, Prabhupada writes. And Prabhupada further writes that the Srimad Bhagavatam is non-different from the Lord as it has all the pastimes of the Lord. Therefore, it is factually the literary incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, thus by hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, just by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, men can get purified. Therefore, expert devotees should find out novel ways to preach based on time, place and circumstances. Because it has the medicine. And he says that expert devotees should find out how one can make this message of Srimad Bhagavatam reach to people by according to time, place, circumstances. Like that. Devotional service is a dynamic activity and the experts can find competent means to inject it into the dull brains of the materialists, like the Prabhupada writes.
The proper example is great example. He was Vishakana and then Sarojana.
Prabhupada always did that.
The people just followed him because they were attracted to him. And he practiced the bhakti. Then they later realized Bhagavatam.
And Prabhupada himself also was very keen to meet with the leaders of the society, and Prabhupada always quoted this verse, Yajada charati shreshtas tattad eve tarojana.
Because it contains the transcendental activities of the Lord, there is no difference between the Lord and the meditation. So this transcendental activities, of course, we say that it's connected with the devotees. Which brings out the Krishna's glory. Main transcendental activities 10 canto. It looks like exactly 10 canto is what is the, because in other Puranas, also connected, in the sense that it will contain brings out the glory of the Lord. And not be directly. Then other Puranas also may be considered as a literal incarnation of the Lord, in that sense. Which kind of first canto, second canto, talking. Of course, we can say that it's like totally bringing out. Bhagavatam is totally bringing out in that sense. But even in that, canto can be considered like more if we consider this statement.
The other literatures, Bhagavatam itself says that Dashamasya Vishuddhyartam Navanam Iha Lakshanam Varnayante Mahatmana Shrutena Artena Cha Anjasa. Says that this is the verse after these 10 topics. Atra Sargo Visargasya Sthanam Poshanam Utaya Manvantaresha Anugata Nirodho Muktirashara. After that it is mentioned that actually these 10 topics are not 10 topics of Srimad Bhagavatam. These are the 10 topics of any literature to qualify itself as a Mahapuran. But the uniqueness of Srimad Bhagavatam is that the purpose for which the other 9 topics are described. Dashamasya Vishuddhyartam. For the purpose of bringing out the true glory of the 10th topic, the other 9 topics are discussed. So even the purpose of, but in the other Puranas, even though they may have these other 9 topics, they are not always described to bring out the true glory of the 10th topic. Therefore, there are many descriptions of this other creation and other topics in Srimad Bhagavatam or in other literatures which are disconnected from glorifying the Supreme Lord. But in Bhagavatam, even the genealogical table and all those things are written in such a way that it eventually brings out the glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, it's called the literary incarnation of the Supreme Lord, like that. So then, he says, Tyaktva swadharmam charanambujam hare bhajan apakvo tapate tato yadi yatra kvava vabhramavudamushaki. So he says that Tyaktva swadharmam, this is a very interesting verse, gives scope for many alternate readings also, but let's try to understand this verse. Tyaktva swadharmam harehe charanambujam bhajan, because we very often quote this verse. If one gives up his varnashram duties and harehe charanambujam bhajan and starts worshipping the lotus feet of the Lord, apakko, and because of immaturity, va atapate tato yadi, if he happens to deviate due to immaturity or die before he achieves perfection, amushya kim va abhadram abhut, what loss is there if he does not finish his path? Kovartha apto abhajatam swadharmatah. Kahava artha aptaha. But what does that person who does not worship the Lord but perfectly follows the varnashram, what does he gain? He does not gain anything. So here, this is not talking about a person, because if you see here the word bhajan is used here. This word bhajan indicates that that person is already has the qualification for practice of devotional service. The Shastras describe Jata Shraddho Matkataso Nirvinno Sarvakarmasu Veda Dukkatmakam Kaman Parityago Pyanishwarah, like that. Who is qualified for practice of pure devotional service? That is described. So, this verse is talking about a person who, he may be a neophyte devotee, but he has the qualification to practice pure devotional service. Such a person, if he gives up swadharmam, if he gives up his varnashram duties, in fact, what to speak of if giving up, he has to give up the varnashram duties which are opposed to bhakti. He should not whimsically give up all varnashram duties. For example, taking bath. It is not one of the 9 limbs of devotional service. It is not even quoted by Rupa Goswami as one of the 64 items of devotional service, where he is mentioning about so many things. But it is a varnashram duty. But it is a varnashram duty which is favorable for practice of bhakti, at least in the sadhana avastha. So that should not be given up. But those activities which are unfavorable for one's development of faith in devotional service, those varnashram activities have to be given up. So here, this verse is not talking about any person you catch and, whether he is qualified or not, he should give up his varnashram and take up the bhakti. This verse is not talking about that kind of a thing. This will become more clear in the next 2 verses. What kind of person is being mentioned here? He is telling it's about a person who already has gained the qualification for practice of pure devotional service by the association of devotees. Such a person, if he gives up that gives up varnashram and takes up the bhakti, and later if he even gives up that bhakti due to lack of determination to follow it, there is no loss, because whatever he has practiced as a devotee, that has permanent effect. That's what it means. On the other hand, a person who may perfectly practice varnashram, but if he does not worship the Supreme Lord, if that active ingredient of bhakti is not there, then there is no scope of getting the desired benefit of practice of that varnashram. That's what it's being indicated here. But one may argue, how can you say this? The Bhagavad Gita says, Na buddhi bedam janayet ajnanam karma sanginam joshayet sarva karmani vidvan yukta samachar. 3rd chapter says that one should not unnecessarily inspire a person who is a karma sangi to give up his karma. So here, if you remember the context in which such a statement was made, that comes in the after this Atmarati section. Yes, to Atmarati Revasyat. How a person who is completely absorbed in the self, for such a person there is no attachment to karma. But a person who is not at that stage should not be artificially inspired to give up his prescribed duty and take up to the path of jnana. Okay, if the heart is not, the qualification for jnana is purified heart, jnana yoga, and that purification of heart comes from practice of nishkama karma yoga. But if by proper practice of nishkama karma yoga, if the heart has not yet been purified, he should not be prematurely inspired to take up to the path of jnana. But here we are talking about bhakti. For bhakti, for practice of bhakti, the preliminary qualification is not purification of heart. The preliminary qualification is Shraddha. Shraddha in the process. if one spots a person who may have Shraddha in the process but may not be pure, for such a person, one should not inspire him to continue his Swadharma, but he should be inspired to take up to the practice of pure devotional service. That is what is indicated by Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Pulkasha Abhira Shumba Yavanaha Kasadaya Yenyecha Papa. Papa indicates that they are not purified. Papa does not indicate that previous life they were Kirata Hunandra. In this life they have all these impressions. They are carrying over those impressions during practice of bhakti. But if by some intervention of a devotee, if they have gained that faith in the process, one need not wait for purification. That's what it means. That's what this verse indicates. Otherwise, if a person has not yet gained that Shraddha for devotional service, he should also not be asked to give up his prescribed duties, because that's where his faith is. If he gives up practice of something for which he has faith and takes up something for which he has not yet developed faith, he will not get any result. Because Krishna says, Ashraddhaya hutam dattam tapastaptam kritam chayat asad iti uchyate partha nachatat pretya noiha. Anyone who performs either sacrifice or tapasya or whatever, but without Shraddha, it is as good as not doing that activity, because it will not give any result. So therefore, if you inspire a person to just like that take up the path of devotion when he has not yet developed the requisite faith, then eventually he will give up that path because he has no faith. And when he has no faith, then he will not see any tangible reciprocation also, because it is performed without faith. Therefore, even while preaching, it's not important to make someone chant. It's important to help them develop faith in that chanting, faith in the process. Because without faith, whatever they do, that will have very minimal effect. But with faith, even if they chant one Maha Mantra, that will have the requisite effect. That's what when the scriptures talk about Sakrid, what is it? Shvadopi Sadyah Savanaya Kalpate. Those kind of verses which talk about, once chanting, once remembering. Those verses mean when performed with faith. When performed without faith, thousands and millions of times, it does not have any effect. So therefore, this verse talks about this verse talks about a bhakti adhikari, one who is qualified for bhakti. He can give up varnashram, not when he has not yet gained that qualification of faith. That's what it means. So here, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is giving various proofs for this. How this na buddhi vedam janayat is not for devotees. He says, Swayam nishreyasam vidvan na bhakti ajnaya karmahi narati rogino apatyam vanchatopi vishaktamaha. This comes in the 6th canto. Lord Ajita speaks this verse. He says that one who knows the highest good will never instruct a foolish person to engage in material enjoyment. The equivalent verse for this is in Chaitanya Charitamrita. What is that verse? He says that Ami Vigya Ei Murka Vishaya Kena Diva Swacharanamrita Diya Vishaya Bulaiva. So, but that verse talks about Kamalagi Krishna Bhaje Ama Bhaje Mage Vishaya Sukha. Amrit Chadi Vishaya Mage Ei Bada Murka. Says, what is it? The same verse, can you repeat? Krishna kahe Ama Bhaje. First thing, Ama Bhaje is most important. Ama Bhaje indicates that he has qualification for practice of bhakti. Ama Bhaje Mage Vishaya Sukha. Then that is the most important thing. So he says, one who knows the highest good will never instruct a foolish person. The foolish person indicated here is a Bhakti Adhikari. Is not a person who is qualified for Varnashram. So the foolish person is one who worships the Supreme Lord but also has material desires. To engage in material enjoyment. Just as an experienced physician does not give his patient food that is injurious to his health. Ame Vigna Ei Murka Vishaya Kena Diva Swacharanamrita Diya Vishaya Bulaiva. Even if the patient desires it, he will not give. Like that. So, and further more verses Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur quotes to establish that how one should give up. The highest thing is to give up the Varnashram and to take up the practice of pure devotional service. Sarvadharman Parityajya, he says. And from Uddhav Geet he quotes this famous verse. Dharman Santyajya Yas Sarvan Mam Bhajeta Satu Sattama. One who gives up all the other dharmas and only worships me, he is the best amongst the human beings, like that. Okay. And if a person dies without being qualified to attain the Lord, or if while alive he falls down because of his sinful acts, being attached to material pleasures, even then there is no misfortune incurred by having given up karmas, because the impressions created by bhakti are indestructible and remain in a subtle form. In such a state, one should not revert to performance of karma. Okay. So, in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami writes about the duties expected of a qualified practitioner of devotional service. He says, Ananushthanato dosho bhakti anganam prajayate na karmanam akaranat esha bhakti adhikarinam. He is talking about bhakti adhikari. And this verse is also talking about a bhakti adhikari only. So he says, Sa esha bhakti adhikarinam, that person who is qualified for bhakti, doshaha prajayate, such a person is at fault when bhakti anganam akaranat, if he fails to perform the important angas of bhakti, then he is at fault. Na karmanam akaranat, he is not at fault for non-performance of his varnashram duties. Okay, but daivat, but if by chance nishiddha acharato, if he performs, if he commits some sin, prayaschittam tu na uchitam, does not mean he should not repent for his act. It means that he need not perform the karmakandiya processes of atonement. Okay. Iti matam Vaishnava Shastranam Rahasyam Tadvidam iti matam. This is the opinion of those who know the secret of the Vaishnava Shastras. Which means Dharman Santajya Yassarvan Mam Bhajet Satu Sattama. If one has become qualified for bhakti, one should neither perform activities for which he is underqualified, he should neither perform those activities for which he is overqualified also. If he is at the stage of bhakti, he should not perform varnashram duties. So this is the most important verse. Sve sve adhikare yanishta saguna parikirtitah viparyayastu doshasyat ubayor esha nishchaya. True piety means engagement according to one's own qualification. So therefore there is no activity which is inherently pious or impious. It depends on who performs it. For a Kshatriya, killing is a pious activity. Krishna says, if you don't kill, you are acting impiously. But the same thing for a Brahmana, if he kills, it is an impious activity. So therefore he says, true piety means acting according to one's qualification. Okay. So, sa guna parikirtitah. Just one second. Viparyayastu doshasyat. If you act against it, then it is impiety. If you act against your qualification, it's impiety. Like that. Yes, bro.
The response to what you said, when somebody performing bhakti, he gets into some sinful activities, he need not perform the
Karmakandiya part of atonement. Yeah.
it's not needed.
He has to intensify his practice of bhakti.
The reason that he is not able to do it, he is not doing the bhakti, he has to do something. Like people who are following Shad's he say that bhakti is new. Then they say that you don't have that faith.
If they don't have faith, then they are not bhakti adhikaris yet. Such people should not be.
They are like wholesale devotees, in the sense sending his team down and still they say that connection with the Shah is such that they say that we are not like you, fully dedicated. Their thing is like
Okay, then we have to identify for what reason they are not able to give up. If they think that by non-performance of Shraddha, it will create, I will not be able to spiritually progress, then that practice of bhakti is Jnana Karmadi Avrita Bhakti. It is not. But if they think that if I don't perform, unnecessarily there will be some social pressure. Just to satisfy them, keep them quiet so that they don't disturb me in my practice of devotional service, I will do. That is perfect. But if they think that for their spiritual progress, performance of Shraddha is necessary, then that is not right. Yes, good.
Perform activities as per your nature, it is called as the Varna condition. And if you ask whatever you do, it is called as bhakti. So as per the last statement, whatever you ask, that is called as bhakti. This statement is clear.
See, my understanding is, Krishna says, by qualification, even within the practice of pure devotional service, there are various qualifications. Krishna says, Mai eva mana adatsva. Engage your mind in me. That is the highest if one can do. Engaging one's mind completely in the chanting and hearing process. If one can do. He says, if you cannot do it, Mai buddhim niveshe. Second, engage your intelligence in the shastric study. Then he says, if you cannot do that, then abhyasa yogena tato. He says, endeavor to engage your mind and intelligence in hearing and chanting, which is sadhana bhakti, which is not naturally. So that is the third level. But even that is difficult actually. The fourth level he says is, if you cannot do that, engage your active senses in my service. Okay, that is probably, many of us may fall in that category actually. And next he says, if you cannot do that also, then you perform your prescribed duties and offer the fruits. Okay, that is outside the scope of pure devotional service. But the first four that he says, Mayeva mana adatsva, Mayi buddhim niveshaya, then sadhana bhakti and engagement of one's active senses in devotional service, it all comes under the category of pure devotional service. So, actually, we may fall in one of these categories. So, if we want to have satisfaction, then we should perform activities for which we are qualified in one of these, engaging our active senses in various services. That will make us satisfied. But at the same time, the other activities are there to elevate our qualification. So, one needs to simultaneously act according to their qualification within the realm of bhakti also. But at the same time, there should be some scope for elevating one's qualification. In the Ambarish Maharaj's pastime, it is described that though Ambarish Maharaj was qualified for practice of pure devotional service, he would very scrutinizingly perform the yagyas, karmakandiya yagyas. Of course, he had no faith in that, but just so that people who are not yet qualified, the subjects who are not yet qualified for practice of pure devotional service, they don't give up their practice, because there should be facility given to act according to their qualification. But at the same time, Ambarish Maharaj created a facility where there is lot of scope for hearing and chanting Krishna Katha. It is mentioned in Bhagavatam. So simultaneously, he gave a facility to act according to their qualifications so that they feel satisfied, because their nishtha is there. So according to their nishtha, if they act, they can perceive satisfaction. But at the same time, the facility was given to elevate their qualification. So both must be done. So the morning program, hearing Brahmachari class, these are for most of us, this is like a facility to elevate our consciousness. But service is where most of us probably, that is our nishtha, where we can perceive. If we look for, where is my nama ruchi, maybe it will come much later because we are looking at the wrong place, because our nishtha is here. We have to look for progress at our realm of nishtha, not, and slowly the provision is also given to climb up and reach that stage. Once we reach that stage, we may perceive it there, like that. Okay, we'll continue. So this is another verse from the Uddhav Geet, where Krishna tells Uddhava, Tavat karmani kurvita na nirvidyeta yavata makkata shravanadavva shraddha yavan na jayate. One should continue to perform the Vedic ritualistic activities until one actually becomes detached from material sense gratification and develops faith for hearing and chanting about me. So, if one does not have that adhikar, one should not be just like that given. Just like we actually practically follow this also. When we go, but many of us are involved in youth preaching. So, when we go and preach to students, there will always be different categories of students. Some students will come whom you can clearly identify that they are not interested in devotional service, but at the same time they want to give up their responsibility of studies. So when such people come, because you don't see them as capable of steadily practicing devotional service also, we generally encourage, or we have to encourage them to properly concentrate on his studies. Perform something for which he is currently qualified, and then later, but at the same time you may recommend him to chant 1 or 2 rounds every day. But don't sit throughout the day and chant or sit in the base. You have to go to your classes. At the same time, when someone is doing very well in his studies, but at the same time one sees that spark that he is capable of taking up the devotional service, then you may encourage him to, instead of coming only on Sundays, why don't you come every day, chant 4 rounds with us, and then you can go back to your college. Like that we encourage. So we also do this actually, only according to one's qualification. In the qualification we see, only such people we encourage, or we should encourage actually. If one is looking for escaping from his responsibilities, then after taking up to devotional service also, he would do the same, like that. So that's what Krishna is telling here, that till one develops that Shraddha towards Shravana Adavva, towards Shravanam, Kirtanam, etc., till then one should not be encouraged to give up his prescribed duties, like that. Anyway, so we'll continue. But then one may say that you are talking so much about bhakti, but many of the scriptures talk about the pleasures of heavenly enjoyment. How can you refute it? So he says, Tasyaiva hetoho prayateta kovido na labhyate yad brahmatamu paryadaha tallabhyate dukkavadanyata sukham kalena sarvatra gavira ramhasa. He says, if one is a kovida, if one is a intelligent man, prayateta tasyaiva hetoho, he would endeavor only for that happiness, yad nalabhyate yad brahmatam uparyadaha, that which one does not get by going from patala to brahmaloka, that which one does not get by such a brahman. Because why? Tallabhyate Sukham Sarvatra Anyatah. Because he knows that material happiness is attained in all cases without endeavor, by law of karma. Dukkhavat, just like dukkha also, one does not endeavor for getting distress, but one automatically gets according to one's karma. Similarly, sukha also one gets without endeavor. Therefore, he does not endeavor for that happiness which one is anyway destined to get. So, therefore, such a person, prayateta, he endeavors to attain that happiness which cannot be attained by moving from Patala to Brahmaloka, which is the bhakti, which is the happiness of devotional service, like that. So here, Srila Prabhupada writes in this purport, there are various programs for sense gratification in various planets. Happiness and distress are available due to one's own karma, but all the facilities from Patala to Brahmaloka are just temporary. Therefore, one should not waste time in flimsy things and one should endeavor to go back home, back to Godhead. Tallabhyate dukkhavat anyata sukham kalena sarvatra kabira ramhasa. Like that. So, but one may ask that, okay, if you say that if someone gives up his varnashram and takes up the bhakti, he is superior. Agreed. But you are telling, even if such a person gives up that bhakti also, still there is no misfortune. How can you say that? If he is continuing to practice bhakti, we can understand. Okay, you may say that bhakti is superior to varnashram, so it is superior. But if such a person is neither following varnashram nor following bhakti, then how is such a person superior to a person who is practicing varnashram at least nicely? So, in response to that, Narada Muni speaks this verse. He says, Navaijano jatu katanchana vrajet mukunda sevyanya vadanga samsritim smaran mukundangri upagohanam punar vihatumicche narasagraho jana. He says, Mukunda Sevi. First, here also another important point to be noted. This person who is being talked about, who was spoken about in the Tyaktva Swadharmam verse, is again clarified here, is Mukunda Sevi. That is his primary qualification. Mukunda Sevi Janaha Navai Jatu Katanchana Samsritim Avrajet. Navai Jatu, at any point of time, Katanchana, under any conditions, Samsritam Avrajet, he will never come back to this material world, or he will never enter the samsara chakra. Anyavad. Anyavad means unlike the other practitioners, which means Anyavad indicates that this is a differentiation between the Bhakti Adhikari and the other Adhikaris. Smaran Mukundangri Upagohanam. Upagohanam means embrace. Remembering the embrace of the lotus feet of the Lord, either in the form of the ecstasy of hearing Krishna Katha, or ecstasy of taking darshan of the deities, ecstasy of serving the deities, ecstasy of having wonderful exchanges with the Vaishnavas. In whatever form he remembers the Mukunda Angri Upagohanam, the embrace of the lotus feet of Mukunda, Rasagraha, eager for that taste which he experienced before, Punarna Vihatum Ichet, such a person would never desire to give up those lotus feet again. Even though he has given up, but the memory of that embrace, of that experience of the bliss of bhakti is so powerful that again and again he would be drawn back to the practice of devotional service. Therefore, here he says that there is actually no fall down for a devotee. If one is a bhakti adhikari, if one has started practicing devotional service, there is nothing called fall down in that sense. Because it is only a question of time before which he would be sucked back into the service. But we may end up criticizing that person, and because of aparadh we may actually fall down. But that person, because of his previous impressions, he may momentarily give up. But Krishna says that I will give him remembrance of that embrace of my lotus feet which he experienced while practicing. He will come back. But when we criticize, because of aparadh we may fall down actually. So that's what is indicated here, that there is nothing called fall down for a Mukunda Sevi. He will not enter samsara like a person who has taken up to the other paths and not perfected it. Such a person will fall back, but a Mukunda Sevi will not fall back. Because Krishna will give those remembrances again and again and pull him back. So, even if overcome because of poor determination, the person who serves returns to samsara, the place for enjoying the results of karma, whereas those practicing, he never returns, but a person who is practicing karma, he will return. That is because he does not experience the happiness and distress from the karmas, since he experiences only the fruit of happiness and distress directly given by the Lord. So if he is a Mukunda Sevi, then his experience of happiness and distress is also not because of his karma, but because that is being directly given by the Lord. So, Srila Vishwanath Thakur here quotes a verse from the 10th canto to emphasize this point. He says, Tvad avagami is your follower, na veti bhavat utta shubha ashubhayor. When a person realizes you, Tvad avagami, one who has realized you already, Mukunda Sevi, he no longer cares about his good and bad arising from his past pious and sinful acts, since it is you alone who control this good and bad fortune. He sees it as he sees the hands of the Supreme Lord directly. Tattenu kampam samikshamano munjana eva atmakritam vipakam. So he sees everything as coming out of humility. He thinks that it is because of my own karma, but at the same time he sees the hands of God minimizing that experience of karma also. No, this is there is some problem with practice. I have not. You have to read directly. Some part of the sentence is missing.
So this is talking about the person who is not determined.
If because of poor determination, if he gives up for some time, then still Krishna will give him the remembrance of his blissful days when he was practicing.
He will return to the samsara.
He will not return to samsara. He will not return to samsara. But a non-practitioner of bhakti, he will return to samsara. His next birth is not due to his karma. It is directly facilitated by the Supreme Lord. Short time, yeah. Short time means here, this will be clarified here. Just hold on, it's coming. And then further, he quotes from Padma Puran to show, Na karma bandhanam janma vaishnavanam sa vidyate. The Vaishnavas do not have birth caused by karma. They may have rebirth, but that birth is not caused by karma. It is directly facilitated by the Lord. That facilitation he does even for the yogis. Shuchinam Shrimatam Gehe Yoga Brashto Vijayate. He does that. For devotees he certainly does it. Okay, like that.
One is going through the element of nature. Another is directly intervening.
Yeah.
In the case of pure devotees, directly intervention. When we say the Lord is doing it, we say like yogis, for example. So then it is true, like Krishna directly himself doing it, or even the person who for short time chance will give up.
See, short time chance means here we are talking about a person who for a short time chance and gives up, he may not have developed, he may have given up that chanting because he has not yet reached the stage of that Shraddha. Because he is doing it without Shraddha, he gives up. But if we are talking about a person who has achieved that stage of Shraddha, then after doing it for some time, if he gives up, then if you observe for some more time, he will take back to the process again.
This is also intervening
Yeah.
about the nature.
Intervening means he will take birth again, but then Krishna will facilitate that he takes birth in such a situation where he can continue from where he left. It will not be controlled just by his karma. Narada Muni's case. Gajendra. Prag Janmini Anushikshitam. Yeah, correct. Same thing. So Krishna facilitated in the case of Jada Bharat also. Bharat Maharaj, even though he got a dear body, but he facilitated in such a way that he would go to and hear from the sages like that. Okay. So, the accomplishment is in the hands of the Lord. The cause of not desiring to give up is then mentioned. Is because Rasagraho Jana, it is mentioned here. Smaran Mukundangri Upaguhanam Rasagraha. He says Rasagraha means one who is eager for tasting or one who has a taste which is something like a ghost which cannot be given up. It means haunted by rasa. Rasa. He has experienced that rasa of Krishna's embrace, so he is haunted by that. He cannot give up. He comes back to practice of devotional service. Okay, here is the answer. The meaning is that worship after the stages of Nishtha, Ruchi and Asakti becomes actual rasa at the stage of Rati. However, even from the first day of worshipping the Lord, there is certainly a portion of tasting rasa in a very covered form. And Vishnu Chaitanya quotes, Bhakti Pareshanubhavo Virakti. That is the meaning of Para Isha Anubhava. He says, when one practices Bhakti, that Para Isha Anubhava is mentioned here as Rasagraho. Experience of that rasa. That's what he is indicating. And that in a very covered form can be experienced even at the beginning stages, but it becomes more prominently observable when one at least reaches the stages of steady practice of devotional service, Nishtha, like that. So Srila Prabhupada here commenting on this verse, he says, the general proposition is that a devotee automatically becomes disinterested in material things because he has tasted the sweetness of lotus feet of Krishna. But in some cases, they may fall down. But he should not be considered like a karmi. Why? Because a karmi suffers the results of his own karma, but a devotee is directly under the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Example, Prabhupada gave the example of the suffering of an orphan and the suffering of a prince, Prabhupada gives. It's not the same. When a devotee is sometimes materially attached, then he thinks, Yasyaham anugrannami harishyetad dhanam shanaihi. When a devotee is materially attached, then the Lord takes away that attachment. But for another person, because of his karma, his wealth may be taken away. But for a devotee, the Lord personally facilitates his, arranges that his wealth be taken away, so that he can become serious in his practice of devotional service. Okay. Therefore, Prabhupada says there are two kinds of Lord's mercy. When he wants to bestow mercy upon a devotee, he says the lower form of mercy is Shuchinam Shrimatam Gehe. Make him take birth in an aristocratic family or a nice family so that he can practice. Second is Yasyaham Anugrannami. He says for the more serious devotee, he does the second thing. Take away his attachments so that he can take sincere shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But for a beginner devotee who has given up, he creates that facility so that he can steadily practice devotional service. scripture Srimad Bhagavatam. He says that actually you know all this subject matter, but because it is said Acharyavan Purusho Veda, one who is an Acharyavan, one who has an Acharya, only he can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that such kind of sentences in the scriptures should not go wrong. Therefore, as a token, I will give you some instructions on knowledge. You can expand upon it, you know it. So he says that the scriptures say Acharyavan Purusho Veda. Only a person who has an Acharya, he can understand. When the Acharya explains to him, Upadekshanti te jnanam, only he can understand. So that such statements should not go wrong. Therefore, I will give you some token instructions, but you are already qualified to write on these subject matters. You can write like that. So he is giving some token instructions to Vyasadeva. So he says, Idam hi vishvam bhagavani vetaro yato jagatsthana nirodha sambhava taddi swayam veda bhavans tatapite pradesha matram bhavata pradarshitam. He says, Idam hi vishvam bhagavan iva. This universe is the Lord. But Bhagavan iva. Not in all respects. Okay. The word iva indicates that the universe is not the Supreme Lord in all respects. Itaraha. At the same time, it is also different from, the Lord is also different from the universe. Why? Yato Jagatsthana Nirodha Sambhava. Because he is the cause of this universe. From him arises the creation, maintenance and destruction of this universe. So being the cause, he is different from the universe also. And because of the non-difference of cause and effect, he can also be considered as the universe also. That is the meaning of Idam hi Vishwam Bhagavan Iva. Taddi Bhavan Swayam Veda. All this you already know. I need not tell you. Tatapi Bhavatah Pradarshitam. Therefore, but still I am just giving you some small portion of this knowledge. Pradesha Matram. A small portion of bhakti and knowledge concerning the Lord's power. Like that. Bhavan Swayam Veda. This, you know this naturally since you are an avatar of the Supreme Lord. Vyasadeva is the literary incarnation of the Supreme Lord. Narad Muni is telling to Vyasadeva, you are literary incarnation, you know. The purpose of your avatar itself is this only. So you know this, but still, Srila Vishnu Thakur says that thus I have, you know all this spontaneously because you are an avatar of the Lord. Thus I have shown only a small portion of bhakti and knowledge of the powers of the Lord in order to fulfill the statement Acharyavan Purusho Veda. People should not say that for everyone Acharya is needed, but Vyasadeva does not need an Acharya. One should not say that. Actually, you don't need an Acharya. Prabhupada writes in his purport. Prabhupada writes, Vyasadeva being an incarnation of the Lord, he does not need an Acharya. But still he accepts Narada Muni as an Acharya in order to set the right example. So Narada Muni also tells the same thing. You don't need an Acharya. But later people should not take your example and reject Acharyas. Therefore for that I will give you a token instruction. Please take it like that. So here Srila Prabhupada commenting on this verse, he says, for a pure devotee, the Lord is both personal and impersonal. How impersonal? He says, because that impersonal feature is his energy. Prabhupada gives the example of leaves and branches of a tree are the same as the tree, but they are not same also. Idam hi Vishwam Bhagavan Iva Itaraha. They are same, at the same time they are non-different. Similarly, the parts of the body and the body are simultaneously the same and different. But conditioned souls accept this material nature as all in all and don't recognize the personal form of the Lord. Okay, I am reading from the purport. Therefore, the godless civilization, which is like hands and legs, therefore, a godless civilization is like hands and legs detached from the body, like the Prabhupada writes. Therefore, Narada Muni is advising Vyasadeva to expand on this point so that the conditioned souls may learn. Prabhupada writes, the human beings and all other living beings are products of his internal energies. Thus, the living being is also identical with the Lord. He is expanding on this. Idam hi Vishwam Bhagavan Eva. How the part can also under some circumstances be considered to be the whole, and under what, and how the energy sometimes can be here the material nature, which is the Bahiranga Shakti, is identified with the form of the Lord sometimes. In what respect he is explaining. Like that he is telling the living entities are also Tatastha Shakti, and they are also, you can say that they are also non-different from the Lord. But he is never equal to or superior to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord and the living beings are all individual persons. With the help of the material energies, the living beings are also creating something, but none of their creations are equal or superior to the creations of the Lord. A human being may create a small, playful Sputnik and may throw it into the outer space, but that does not mean that he can create a planet like the Earth or Moon and float it in the air as the Lord does. Like that. So he says, Taddi Swayam Veda. All this you naturally know, but therefore I am giving you only some token knowledge. Pradesha Matram Bhavata Pradarshitam. You can expand on this like that. Then he encourages Vyasadeva by further telling again indicating that what are Vyasadev's qualification, that he can elaborate on this subject matter. He says, Tvamatmanatmanam avehyamo vadrik parasya pumsat paramatmanak kalam ajam prajatam jagata shivayatan mahanubhava vyudayo diganyatam. He says, Tvam amogadrik, you possess useful knowledge. Atmana Atmanam Avehi. Please understand spontaneously that Parasya Pumsaha Kalam Prajatam. You are born as a portion of the Supreme Person. Who is the Supreme Person? Paramatmanaha, the Supreme Paramatma. And what is the purpose of your descent? Jagata Shivaya. You have born in this world, or your appearance is for the benefit of this whole world. Tad adiganyatam maha anubhava abhyudaya. Therefore, please describe. So, Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur says, Adiganyatam means describe. Adiganyatam means adhikam ganyatam. That which you have described the glories of the Lord, but do it profusely. Write one scripture in which there is profuse glorification of the Lord. What to speak of profuse? There must be only glorification of the Lord. Write one scripture like that to offset all your other writings. Okay, like that. Then he says, but one may say that we understand that bhakti is the highest sadhana, prema is the highest sadhya, but I am not at that stage. I have a desire to enjoy, let's say, liberation, that which can be attained by the process of jnana yoga, or I have a desire to go and enjoy in Swarga by practice of karma yoga. So I have all these other desires. I don't have desire for prema. So should I practice bhakti? So he says, why not? Idam hi pumsas tapasas shrutasya va shvishtasya suktasya chava buddhi dattayoho avicchitortakka vivirnirupito yaduttama shloka gunanu varnanam. He says, avicchuta arthaha, the unfailing cause of perfection. Chuta means to fall down. Avichyuta means never falling down, which means the unfailing cause of perfection for Pumsaha Tapasa Shrutasyava, for the cause of perfection for performance of austerity or the study of Vedas, Shvishtasya for the performance of sacrifices, Suktasya for the chanting of mantras, Buddhi for the practice of Jnana, Dattayoho for the practice of charity. Whatever one performs, whatever one desires to attain by practicing any of these paths, the cause of attaining that success is what? Uttama Shloka Gunanuvarnanam. Okay, so even if one desires to achieve the perfection, to achieve Swarga or Swarga by practice of Karma Kanda, or liberation by practice of Jnana Kanda, or if they desire to achieve some pious credits by performance of charity, tapasya, etc., the reason why they get all that they desire is because that practice has the element of bhakti in the form of Uttama Shloka Gunanuvarnanam. So therefore, even without those practices being practiced, if only Uttama Shloka Gunanuvarnanam is there, still one can get the result of those practices. Therefore, it is important that you write about the active ingredient. What gives result actually? So, that's what he is telling. Idam hi pumsas tapasya shrutasya va shvishtasya suktasya cha buddhi dattayoho avichyutortha kabibir nirupito. The wise people have understood this very clearly, and they have established that the unfailing cause of perfection of any of these practices is Uttama Shloka Gunanuvarnanam. Is glorifying the qualities of Supreme Lord is the main cause of achieving success of any of these practices. Okay. Throughout Bhagavatam, this is very clear. For example, Krishna says to Uddhava in the 11th canto, Yat karmabir, yat tapasa, jnana vairagyatas yogena dana dharmena, shreyobir itarairapi, sarvam madbhakti yogena madbhakta labate anjasa, swarga apavarga maddama katanchid yadivanchati. He says that whatever can be achieved by karma, yat karmabir, yat tapasa, by tapasya, jnana vairagyatas yogena, by yoga, dana dharmena, whatever one can get by dana, dharma, etc. Shreyobi ritarairapi, whatever one desires to get by that. Sarvam madbhakti yogena madbhakta labate anjasa. All of that my devotee just by practice of bhakti can easily attain. Swarga, apavarga, maddama, whatever he desires, I am willing to give. He need not practice any other path. Only by bhakti he can achieve all of this, like that. And also, interestingly, Shri Vishnu Thakur quotes here the verse Smartavya Satatam Vishnu Vismartavyo na Jatatit Sarve Vidhi Nishedhyasyur Etayo Reva Kinkara. He says that there may be many rules and regulations, but if all of them are practiced and if remembrance of Vishnu is not practiced, then it is as good as not practicing any of the other rules. But if this one rule is practiced and all the other rules are not practiced, one gets the same result. An intelligent person will understand its corollary, that only practice of this one rule is important, other rules are not so important, like that. So, throughout Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami in his prayers, he says, Tapasvino, Danapara, Yashasvino, Manasvino, Mantravida, Sumangala, Kshemam, Na Vindanti, Vinaya Darpanam, Tasmai Shubhadra Shravase Namo Nama. In the second canto, he says that Tapasvi, Danapara, Yashasvino, all of these people, Kshemam na vindanti vinaya darpanam. If their practice is devoid of worship of bhakti, Kshemam na vindanti, that practice cannot give their desired benefit. And then further, he says, in the same series of prayers, he says, Yadangra Vidyana Samadhi Dautaya Dhyanu Pashyanti Hi Tattvamatmana. That a yogi, only because of meditating and worshipping the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he understands the Paramatma. And further he says, Vichakshana yat charanopasadana sangam vidasya ubhayatontaratmanah vindanti hi brahma gatim gataklamaha. He says, even the Jnana yogi can attain his desired goal of merging in the impersonal Brahman only by yat charana upasadanat, only by worshipping the lotus feet of the personal form of the Lord can a Jnana yogi also attain his desired goal of merging into the impersonal Brahman. So even if one wants to merge into the impersonal Brahman, if that may be one's goal of life, but they cannot reject the personal form of the Lord. Their object of worship cannot be Brahman. Their goal may be Brahman, but their object of worship has to be Supreme Personality of Godhead only. That is indicated here, like that. So therefore, here Narada Muni is telling Vyasadeva that this is the essence. This is how important the subject matter is. That whatever you have written, understand, I am just reminding you that the active principle is bhakti. So write a book, write one book where you purely write only about this active principle. By practicing which, one can get the result of all the practices, and if all the other practices are devoid of this one active principle, there is no result, like that. Then Narada Muni has concluded speaking about the principles. Now he is going to speak about his own life. He is going to give the example of his own life, and by telling that, he is going to touch upon one very important point of how one attains this bhakti. If bhakti is so superior, then how does one attain this bhakti? That is indicated in this section, and the progress of bhakti, that is also indicated here in this section. So Narada Muni starts describing his till what time? 4 o'clock. So we have just 7 minutes more. Ideally I should have completed this chapter, but we got stuck up in between. So let's try to cover at least 5-6 verses quickly, and very important points just we will touch upon and we'll continue. So he starts describing his life story. Aham puratita bhave bhavam mune dasyastu kasyaschana vedavadinam nirupito balaka eva yoginam shushrushane pravrishinirvivikshatam. He says, Aham pura atita bhave. In one of my previous lives, in the previous kalpa of Brahma, kasyaschana dasyastu abhavam. I was born as the son of some insignificant maid servant. Vedavadinam nirupitaha, who was engaged by some devotees who were studying the Vedas in their service. Balaka eva, even though I was a child, yoginam shushrushane, I was engaged in serving those Bhakti Vedantas. Pravrishi nirvivikshatam, who had decided to stay in our place because it was Chaturmas. Those 4 months they decided to stay and study the Bhakti Shastras during those 4 months. And they had engaged my mother in service, and because even though I was a child, but still I also engaged in serving those Bhakti Vedantas. So in this section he is going to establish that how there is no cause for pure bhakti other than the fortunate mercy of the devotees of the Lord. Austerity and other processes are not the cause. to illustrate this, Narada Muni recounts a previous birth.
They were engaged in study of Veda. Looks like they are.
Yeah, but this will become clear that what portion of the Vedas, because Bhakti also comes in the Vedas only. But this will become clearer that in one of the later verses it will become clear that they were actually devotees. Te mayapeta kila chapalervake dante dhrita kridanake nuvartini chakru kripam yadyapitulya darshana shushrushamane munayolpabhashini. He says, Yadyapi munayah tulya darshanaha. So we will just end with this verse. That is a very important verse. Very important principle of devotional service is indicated here. So he says, Yadyapi munayah tulya darshana. The munis were equanimal, they had equal vision. Tulya darshana. But te mayi kripam chakruhu. But still they showed mercy to me, not to everyone else. Okay. Apeta akila chapale arbake. Apeta akila chapale means though I was, as Prabhupada writes, though I was not free from the childish proclivities and I was arbaka, I was just a child, I was a boy. But still they showed mercy upon me, and because of which I developed wonderful qualities. What were they? Dante, I became sense controlled. Adhrita kridanake, I gave up childish play and all agitation. Anuvartini, I became very obedient. Shushrushamane, I served very attentively. And Alpabhashini, I spoke very little. Because of the mercy bestowed by the Bhaktivedantas, I developed all these qualities. Though these qualities are not characteristic they were uncharacteristic of a small boy. A small boy is not expected to, a small child is not expected to show such qualities. But still, because of their kripa, I could develop all these qualities, is mentioning here. So, though the sages were tulya darshana, and thus they should not show mercy to one and reject in disgust another. If they are tulya darshana, then why should they show mercy only to Narada Muni and not others? However, they showed mercy to me. Okay. Their first show of mercy did not depend on Narada's good qualities and show of respect. That is the main important point. Okay. Their show of mercy was not dependent on the presence or absence of good qualities. It is not that Narada Muni, they showed mercy to Narada Muni because he had good qualities. And it's not that he was, others were not possessing the good qualities, that's why they did not show it to other people. It's not like that. He developed the good qualities by their mercy. Then those qualities became the cause of further mercy. Because if good qualities became the cause of giving mercy, then good qualities become the cause of bhakti, which is not true. So that the bhakti within their heart flowed to them, to Narada Muni, and by that bhakti he developed good qualities, and further when the good qualities were manifest, further reciprocations were based on the good qualities which were created by the bhakti, mercy. It must be explained that the cause of their mercy was not due to seeing qualities. If one says that though they had equal vision, they showed mercy because he showed good qualities, then their equal vision would be contradicted by their seeing good and bad qualities. That cannot be. One should not explain in this way, because then the first mercy would be prejudiced. Then good qualities which Narada Muni might have developed because of his pious previous births would become the cause of bhakti. Then piety would become the cause of bhakti, but bhakti is not born out of piety. There are two types of mercy: that which is affected by seeing material qualities and that which is not affected by seeing material qualities. The great Bhaktivedantas or the great devotees, they show the second kind of mercy, that which is not affected by seeing material qualities. Whereas ordinary people, when they see someone dealing with them in a nice way, they reciprocate. If they are not dealing with them in a nice way, kind way, then they are also unkind. So that is sapeksha mercy or sapeksha kripa. Whereas devotees show nirapeksha kripa. That is what is indicated here. And a beautiful verse he quotes from Srila Vishwanath Thakur quotes from the 10th canto, autumn in Vrindavan. Okay, so Shukadeva Goswami describing the autumn in Vrindavan quotes this verse. He says, Girayo mumuchus toyam kwachinna mumuchus shivam yata jnanamritam kale jnanino dadatena va. He says, during this season of autumn, Sharad Ritu, Girayo kwachid mumuchuhu, the mountains sometimes release shivam toyam, pure water. Kwachid na mumuchuhu, sometimes they don't release. So, the mountain's release of water is not dependent on, oh, here is a pious person, I will release some water. Oh, here is an impious person, I will not release water. It is not sapeksha kripa. It is nirapeksha kripa. Because the mountain is an inanimate object. He cannot sense piety or impiety. So, the mountain releases whoever comes. Sometimes it releases, sometimes it does not release. That release is not dependent on the quality of the recipient. Similarly, yata, the same way, jnanamritam kale jnanino dadate nava. Just as experts in transcendental science, jnanamritam dadate nava. Sometimes they give, sometimes they don't give, but that giving or not giving is not dependent on the qualities of the recipient. Okay, the giving or not giving is dependent on how their hearts had been transformed by the bhava that is indicated. So he quotes this verse from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He says, Shuddha Sattva Visheshatma Prema Suryam Shu Samya Bhav Uchadis Chitta Mashranya Krit Asau Bhava Uchyate. That part of bhakti is called bhava, okay, which is considered to be one ray of the sun of prema. Chitta Mashranya Krit. That bhava softens the heart and it creates desire to serve and exchange love with the Supreme Lord. So he says that softness of heart generates that compassion because of which they show mercy. But the show of mercy is not due to seeing good qualities. It is because their heart has become soft. So that is the cause of their showing mercy to someone and not showing mercy to other people. So here we will end with this one point, that though we hear these 9 stages of bhakti, Adav, Shraddha, Tata, Sadhu, Sangha, Bhajana, Kriya and so on, that is given in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. But Srila Vishwanath Thakur expands it slightly more for better understanding. He says first comes Satam Kripa. This is even become before Shraddha. Satam Kripa is mercy of devotees, and that Satam Kripa creates Mahat Seva, service to devotees. And when that service creates 1 and 2 is the way in which Ajnata Sukriti is generated. That when 1 and 2 keeps on happening for many lifetimes, then that accumulation of Ajnata Sukriti matures into what is called Shraddha. That is the 3rd stage. And Prabhupada Goswami starts with this 3rd. But Vishwanath Thakur gives 2 stages before. It starts with Satam Kripa. Satam Kripa leads to Mahat Seva. Then that matures into Shraddha. And then so on. And then the next further stages are there. So it is this accumulation of Ajnata Sukriti through Satam Kripa and Mahat Seva which creates that faith. So that is what is indicated here. How the Bhaktivedantas gave an opportunity for Narada Muni to perform Mahat Seva because of their Kripa. By their mercy, he developed all good qualities and he started Shushru Shamane. Then he got Shraddha, and by that Shraddha, he took the shelter of the Bhakti Vedantas. Then he says that then the next stage is before Bhajana Kriya, he says Bhajaneshu Spriha. One gets a desire to perform devotional service, then the desire manifests into devotional activities, and then Anartha Nivritti and so on. So here in the next few verses, gradually it will describe how Narada Muni progresses from the first stage to 12th stage of Prema by the association of Bhakti Vedantas. In this verse, the first 4 stages are described: Satam Kripa, Mahat Seva, Shraddha, and Gurupadashray. And then the 13th and 14th verse, how after Prema one sees the Lord, and then finally the 14th is experiencing the Lord's sweetness. This will be indicated in the next chapter. So this we will see. So we will stop there, and maybe next week Radhika Vallabha Prabhu or Gauranga Darshan Prabhu will continue. Srila Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavatam ki.